Lee is a mentor to creatives and business owners, weaving together astrology, human design, and energetics. She helps people to create energy alignment in life and business by honoring who they are and harnessing their unique energetic signature. Amy and I connected a few years ago, and I had the pleasure of being Amy's coach right at the beginning of her business journey. Since then, her business has just absolutely exploded. You might know her online at Amy Lee on Instagram. She gives the most incredible insights into human design, astrology, and the gene keys. And I'm really excited to chat with her today. Hi, Amy. I am so excited to have you as a guest on the Do Business Differently interview series. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you again.
Thanks, Honey, for having me. Excited to chat with you today.
I always like to get an idea of what you do in your business.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Amy Lee. So I'm an astrologer and human design guide. And so kind of have two aspects of my work. One aspect of my work is more around teaching now. So I have courses and trainings that teach people human design and astrology. And then I have another aspect of my work where I work with people, helping them with sort of energy alignment and a little bit of business mentoring and things like that. So a lot of group things and then a lot of one-on-one.
Huge congratulations for what an incredible amount of growth has happened for you in such a short amount of time. Can you just give us a bit more of what was the journey for you? What was the turning point for you in discovering energy work and astrology, human design that has really impacted and led you to where you are today in your business?
So I started studying human design and astrology quite intensely in 2017, but I would say this all really kicked off for me in 2012. I had a big health, as a lot of people did. I think there was a big transition in 2012. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. And so I became really interested in energy then, but still went down the path of creating a career that was really built on, like hard work, big hours. I was in the fashion industry, really high. As you would know, actually, Catherine, you coached me while I was still working in that industry. And this was a lot of what we worked on together, right? And that was really what led me into feeling so connected to human design, because human design really helped me understand my energy and understand why that life of like grind, hustle, work, 12-hour days, 70-hour weeks, like why other people seem to be able to sustain it. And I literally thought I was dying. Like there were so many times where I would say to my family, like, it sounds so dramatic, and I can be dramatic, but I feel like my body's breaking down. Like I just can't do this. So I actually feel like my business was created from a place of I need to change things to survive and get healthy and get well. And I just knew there was something else. And so it was really through bringing those modalities together. So I'd always had an interest in astrology since I was a teenager, like would read books and get readings and, but never ever thought it could be my career. Like if you'd asked me when I was a teenager, it's one of the last things I would have thought I was going to do. I would have said like business or fashion or interior design or something. And so, but it was a passion, it was a real passion of mine. And so in 2017, after doing a lot of other study and work, I decided to study astrology just to do something for fun, because I felt like I needed that like reinvigoration. And then while I was studying astrology, I found human design and it was like, oh, that's the missing piece. And then I went on to study with you at Soul Medicine Academy, which is how I connected with you, Catherine. And that kind of brought in the deeper awareness of energy, the deeper integration of that as well. So yeah, as many projectors though will probably resonate. I think with a lot of projectors, we get to the point of like burnout and like this, why isn't this working? That helps us kind of catalyze into something else and a new way of being.
Just being that highly sensitive person, so much of it is like comes down to like being constantly told your whole life that you are being too dramatic, you just need to toughen up, like all of these messages that we get. And then we move into these careers, and for some reason it's like, yeah, I can totally sustain a 12-hour work day. Or how have you found, and for anyone who has found that they've gone down this path and decided to start their own business because they did need to change something about the way that they were working, how have you found that transition? Because I know for myself, I found it really difficult to not just repeat the patterns of conditioning of like sitting at my computer by 9 a.m. on a Monday morning and sitting there for 8 hours, whether I was getting anything done and being effective or not, feeling like resting during the week was being lazy and not contributing to my business and my income and all of that. It took me probably 5 years to stop working on a Monday just by default, and actually now being with that. How did you find that transition? And do you have any words of wisdom for anyone who's navigating that at the moment?
I would say be patient with yourself. It's something like deconditioning takes a lot. Like I'm the same. And it's really easy when you go into working for yourself for those survival patterns to come in. And so for me, when I fully started working for myself, I think I was pretty exhausted. It was also when COVID was kicking off. So there was a lot of mental charge. Everyone was high, we're all isolating, things like that. So I went into like deep rest. So I had a good few months of just like really resting.
Yeah.
That really helped. But no, be patient. I still catch myself. Like I have to stop myself, I'm pretty good with the work thing though now with the sacral center, recognizing when enough's actually enough. It helps that I work at home on my own and I don't have any sacral people. Like I don't have any generators or mani-gens who live with me or who I'm kind of feeding off, because that can make it a little bit more intense because you're kind of amplifying their energy. The illusion of energy, right? You're like, I've got all this stuff. And then they go away or then you stop and it's like, whoa, okay. Yeah. They say in human design, actual deconditioning takes at least 7 years, so it's something you just cyclically kind of go through and you get better and better and you get better at recognizing it in the moment rather than retrospectively, I believe.
You kind of look back and go, that's interesting, because once upon a time, a year ago, I wouldn't have done that. Or a year ago, I would have just said yes to every opportunity that came my way. It takes a long time to unravel, and going against so much of the way we're taught it should look can be really challenging when our energy is impacted by the energy of others as well. I think that is like the double whammy, right?
And it's the non-energy types, particularly the projectors, who often look like the energized, like in the beginning, because you actually amplify sacral energy. So people can have really wild expectations of you if you amplify energy and you are go, 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 and maybe you start a new job and you can sustain 12-hour days for 3 months. That becomes the expectation. And then when you can't do it, it's like something wrong. I'm doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with me. Whereas really that wasn't healthy to begin with. You just don't realize it in the beginning.
And then you just burn out to a crisp and you're like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Or you leave jobs. Like I had a cycle of basically only being able to stay in a job for 2 years at a time. And I would come in, be really excited, do really well, get promotions, all this stuff, and then burn out and be like, I'm dying. I need to leave this job. My body's not happy here.
Amazing. Like that has just really unlocked something from my career history as well. So thank you for that.
No, I'm glad. But it can be so powerful for projectors to know other projectors too, to help with that, having those examples of like, people who can rest and slow down, who are a little bit further along in their deconditioning, just to help give you that permission slip of, if I want to stop and watch a movie on a Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to, or if I need to take 4 days off this week, what does my body need? It can be really helpful to rewrite that story,
You're absolutely right. It's so nice to have that in your field when you're used to just constantly seeing that hustle and grind, and also the results. I've got a few projectors in a group I'm running at the moment, and we were talking the other day about how that bitterness, that frustration can come from like doing all of the work and doing all of the things, and how much harder it can feel sometimes. And then we can look at other people who don't seem to be doing as much and yet get those results. So it's such an interesting, again, unraveling of what we're seeing versus like how we're supposed. I make money when I'm resting, and then when I'm pushing too hard, like I've started to see those results that just keep reconfirming like rest.
Yeah, well, it's the thing with the sacral, right? If you're in the not self of your sacral, you're actually just going to repel people. So you think doing more is going to get the results, and it's actually repels the people in the business. You'd be better off stopping, resting. But it takes a lot to give yourself that permission. It's a big journey.
For sure. One of the things that clients that come into my orbit are constantly worried about is like, what happens when, how do I not burn out on social media? What do I do when I'm worried about what other people are going to think or say, like, you know, if I build this huge audience and I don't have the capacity to sustain it. And the thing that I always say to them is, look, for most of us, it's a long game, and it's not necessarily you're going to like start posting on Instagram today and suddenly have 50,000 followers. Like, you're going to start small. That gives you the space to learn and grow and test things out and get more comfortable with your message and start to build those kind of deeper one-on-one connections for people who are energized by that in a way that is sustainable. It can be sustainable if we're operating in a way that's in alignment with our energy. You're kind of the unicorn of someone who like has not had that experience. And so I can't speak from that experience. So I would love to hear from you. Like, how have you navigated that huge growth? Because I think the last time I even was on your account, you were at like 50, just over 50,000. And that was not that long ago. And so the growth that I've seen you have been experiencing is like, it's big. How have you navigated that as a projector, as a highly sensitive person, as someone who's more introverted? Because yeah, I even know for me, I like the thought of it is a bit terrifying.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. I think that number can feel, you know, terrifying when you actually think about how many people that actually is.
Yeah, in a room, like put that many people in a stadium.
If I had to get up and speak to that number of people, I would lose my shit. Like that would be terrifying. For me, so this year's been kind of wild. It has nearly doubled since like January, since the beginning of the year. But up to that point, it did feel like it was quite a steady pace, even though it was still growing quickly. It felt like it was a fairly steady pace. So I think, you know, that really helped. I've done a lot of like nervous system work. I do a lot of embodiment and a lot of grounding. And like anytime I launch anything, or if I'm putting something that feels a bit stretchy, I go back to those practices just to like meet my body and ease my body into it. And I'm a very private person too. Like I'm a Cancer sun with my sun in the 12th house, like a Pisces moon. Like I would happily go live away in the mountains in a little cabin on my own, like very introverted some days, because it's a lot even to connect with that many people in a day. Like I do feel the energy of that. So I have practices to really protect my energy, and I just have boundaries around it. Like I really don't share a lot of my personal life on that page. I used to share more. Now it's very selective what I share. And I have, you know, some people would probably be appalled at this, but I just have had to put in really strong boundaries around like messages and even comments. Like I just gave myself permission like 18 months ago in that I don't have to respond to every message. I don't have to respond to every comment. I don't have to be in Instagram all the time. I look at it as a place where, you know, I'm essentially like channeling or bringing information through, and I put it out into the world, and that's my role kind of done. And I'll go in, and whatever energy I've got, I'll engage with while it feels good, and then I'll go away and sort of retreat and hermit. So I think boundaries help, but also, you know, building your tolerance and building the nervous system support to like gradually ease with that increasing kind of energy. I'm also a Leo rising though, so I try to remind myself of that, and that there is a part of me that only does you know, these things. So I feel like that kind of balances it out for me potentially a little bit more. And I don't know, I don't really look at it as work either. Like I find like creating content is probably one of my favorite things that I do, you know, so I don't find it depleting. I find that something that feels really enriching and energizing for me, like bringing things together, which is very aligned with my human design. So because it feels like life giving to me, it's like I couldn't stop. I would never stop doing that now that I know how good that can feel. So the visibility piece is just what goes hand in hand with that for me.
I think that everything you said there is so helpful, and that we have kind of like, this is, you know, the phone is like an extension of ourselves, right? And it is so valuable to actually be intentionally figuring out, how do I manage this? And also like, what are my boundaries around it? Like if you're feeling drained by social media, is that because of the content creation part of it. And I know lots of people don't like that. I'm like you, but I understand if that's not something that is energizing for you. But having boundaries and figuring out a way of how to make it feel good. And then also, are you feeling de-energized or burnt out by like the creation and sharing process? Or is it actually that you're sitting and scrolling and taking on other people's energy versus like showing up and creating from your soul work and your essence? I think it's two very different things. And I think people sometimes get them mixed up. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am very, like, I will only follow now accounts that I feel uplift me. And even though I have like friends and people who I know who are in human design and astrology, they're basically all muted as well, because I never want, like, I love them, but I'm like, I don't need to see all your stuff. And I don't need to see the generators in human design who are posting 6 times a week and who are in their stories all the time. Like, that can take me into a bit of an unhealthy, or it can bring up, you know, self-criticism and stuff like that. So I just don't engage in that or look at that. It's kind of a way, protecting. But I do feel the more my account has grown, the less time I want to be on Instagram as well. Yes. Like, I just want to come in, share my thing, and then go away as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I see, oh my gosh, I see way too much like Instagram gurus. I see it so often. And like, there's things like, oh, you need to post, 20 stories a day and 3 static posts and a carousel and 5 reels. And then you need to do 30 minutes of engagement 3 times a day. And I'm just like, there's no way. There's no way. Go a week without posting anything on Instagram and have zero qualms about it.
Have you ever noticed where you maybe in the past, if you have posted from that place, how it felt, and it gets a different reaction, doesn't it? It's like it doesn't land as well as when you're in the energy of it.
People can feel that, and it's not so much what you actually say. Potency is more important than consistency, because we've been taught like consistency is everything. Consistency to me is like showing up in my business and showing up for the work, but that is going to look different on a day-to-day basis versus like consistently posting on social media 5 times a day, 5 times a week even, and how that looks, because the potency of the message and the bigger vision behind it and the being of service and having something that's kind of downloaded to share is so much more potent than like, oh, it's 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, I better get that post out today, like banging something out.
Yeah, I feel you. It's funny, I'm just thinking, when I first started my business, I used to try to time things, and that changed pretty quickly. I realized pretty quickly that doesn't feel good. But coming from like my career where you would send EDMs at the times when you knew had the highest open rate and stuff like that, it just doesn't work. I just think we're becoming so much smarter energetically, and we can feel the energy of what's in a transmission, that those kind of old ways of doing it just don't seem to land anymore. I don't know, for most people, even for generators and managers. If there's any generators and managers, I think this applies for everyone, not just projectors.
It's so easy to know your own type and focus on that. And I see so many coaches for projectors, projector coaches for projectors showing up, and like, yes, it's amazing to be in those spaces together, but I think it was something that you said not that long ago about the way that, and you've said it even today on this chat, about the way that projectors can amplify generators and manifesting generators. And it's actually like a really beautiful relationship for people who are navigating those spaces, wanting to work in this space and be mindful of our human design, like that tendency to go, oh, well, I can only work with people who are the same type as me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, there can be resonance between type and type, so they can definitely be like, for projectors are the only type that are really designed to see the other. So there is something that we get out of engaging with other projectors, because we get to be seen and recognized. But there's so many different points that could be resonance between people. I would say the biggest thing to be aware of, though, with colleagues and people you live in, is just both having an awareness of your open centers and both having an awareness of your not self, and just knowing that. So knowing where you amplify energy and knowing where you're sensitive to energy can make like all the difference, right? For all the centers. You might have a partner, you might have an open crown and your partner has a defined crown, and so when you're around them, you feel this pressure to like answer questions. You find yourself consumed with questions. Like just knowing that can really help keep you on track. So it's natural to feel resonance with the same type. You also feel resonance with people who have certain profiles that are kind of in harmony to yours.
Yes.
But we can all work and date and be in relationship with each other. There's no like projectors have to date generators or generators can only date generators. Like, yeah.
That actually brings me to a question that I definitely wanted to ask you today, because that, again, it's like sometimes it can feel like another set of rules and putting ourselves into another box that we've been kind of conditioned into fixating on as a way of understanding ourselves. And I think human design is just another way that we can either be putting ourselves in that box and be kind of locked into those rules, or the liberation and self-awareness and permission that comes with how we operate with it. Because I see people, I'm in a couple of projector groups, it's like, oh, I want to do this. Is it okay? Am I allowed to do this? Do you have any words of advice or wisdom for anyone who is feeling like they're loving diving into it, but how to not get so rigid with what that means?
I see this happening a lot too, and it's kind of the opposite of what human design's meant to be, because I think people, we kind of want to go deep into human design, right? We gloss over, like, I guess, the essentials and the basics. So it should always just come back to your own authority. Like that's the whole point of human design, is that when you're living in alignment with your strategy and authority, it's not about following your strategy in a rigid way. What that does is it helps you disable your mind so you can come into a place of beautiful heart and body coherence. And when you're in that state, you don't need to ask people if you should do something or if you should move there or if you have to wait for the invitation, because you're moving from a place of really sovereign, empowered self-knowing and understanding. But I would say just bringing it back to your authority. If it ever feels restrictive, something's not quite right in the approach. It should feel like affirming and liberating, and ultimately the purpose is for you to become so deeply connected to whatever your own form of intuition, self-knowing is, that you don't need, you can take in other things, you can listen to other people, but you don't need it. It doesn't determine how you make decisions or how you move through the world. So even people who have no inner authority, so I'm thinking of like the mental projectors, like even for them, they are designed to talk it through, but it's not ever about someone telling them what to do. It's about noticing, do I notice excitement in my voice when I'm talking this through, like perceiving what they notice as they're talking the decision through. So for everyone, it's like, if it feels restrictive, there's something just off in the approach. And I would say just come back to strategy and authority, because that will slowly connect you with that deeper heart body coherence. But yeah, if when you get into channels, gates, if you're ever saying, or if anyone's ever saying you shouldn't do something or you can't do something, that's sort of not even human design. In human design, like at the professional level, it's always about have your strategy in mind, but what's your authority telling you? What's your intuition? What's your sacral? What's your emotional wave? What's your ego? Like whatever it is for you. And that's the main piece. To be honest, most people don't need to learn all the different bits of their human design. For most people, just coming into coherence with your authority will align you with everything that's in your design anyway. So yeah.
I think it's so interesting in the online business space, especially, like I'm sure it happens in every industry and space. It's like such a human thing to feel like we need to fixate on a set of rules or be given a process that's like, this is the process, this is the system for success, this is the process for success. And the reality is that, like, even when you're looking at something like astrology and human design, that even people who are born on the same day are going to have all these nuances to their energy, their personality, their strengths and everything, that there's like no one way to do anything.
The chart really doesn't see your life experience, your trauma, how much conditioning you have, like all of those things, right? So it's why I think any kind of, this is the formula and it's a one size fits all formula just doesn't really work anymore, because we're so different.
And I think there's a level of self-awareness, self-leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. The chart doesn't show everything. No one can tell you. Take it with a grain of salt. And I say this to my clients, I'm like, take what I say with a grain of salt. Like, I can tell you things that I'm seeing in your chart, but like ultimately we want your authority, your heart, that to be driving you forward, not what I'm telling you.
So my last question for you is actually one that you've probably already really kind of answered. We've talked so much about it, and this idea of like what feels good for you and that intuitive knowing as making a decision. But as you mentioned as well, like being in a space where there's lots of generators and manifesting generators who are like in your space doing similar work to yours. Like I know that just adds like another layer of all of the noise that we're seeing out there, and how there are people who are having success doing things a certain way. And this interview series is called Do Business Differently for a reason, because like everyone that I talk to here is in some way or another finding a way to navigate this business world, this space, this social construct that is just having to earn money and work in the world to survive in it, but doing it differently from maybe the way that we have been taught we should be doing it. What would you say to someone who, if maybe they're just starting out, or even if it's just to do with human design, or something that you've learned along the way of how you've learned to do business differently from your peers, your teachers, or just the way that we've been taught it should look?
I would say, I hope I can be a good example for doing things differently, because I feel like so many things it's like you have to do this, you have to do this, I've never done and I refuse to do. And I don't have a problem with people doing those things either, but as you probably know, Catherine, I don't enjoy the process of reels, so I don't do reels. But I love other people doing them. Like I love watching other people's, but I've just never but I've heard people say like you have to do reels and you have to do video if you want to move forward in this. And I'm like, well, I'm the opposite. All my posts are kind of static text posts. So for me, I think what I would recommend for people and what I've done is really build a business that's built around the truth of who I am, right? And so I'm a projector, I'm receptive, I'm not strategic, I need to flow, I need to do less, not work so much. And so that's how I work with everything in my business. And that's helped me. I think that because that's been so affirming for me, it's helped me to, when I see the Manigens or I see the generators or I see the people doing the processes that don't feel good for me, I'm able to recognize that like, okay, that's probably aligned for them at this point in time, and not let it sway how I approach things or how I do things. Also just keeping an integrity in mind. Like it would be really like I just couldn't do anything now that didn't feel like it was in integrity with who I am. I don't know, is that helpful? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And so in alignment. Like I do think for people who are like early in their journey, that's a big thing to just suddenly be like, oh yeah, I just have to let go of that. Do you have any suggestions or tips, or even anything that you have noticed, like maybe even early on in your business, that has helped you to go to kind of like start navigating that? Because obviously it does take time, and it takes years of unraveling to get to a place where you can just mute someone and have those boundaries and be like, hey, that's their thing, that's their journey.
So firstly, having the people, I always recommend to people to follow or have people in your aura who are doing things that feel good for you, right? And are approaching business in a way that feels good for you. And then I would say, I think I experimented a lot where I did do things, right? And it's this constant like readjusting of like, okay, that didn't feel good, moving towards this edge. Okay, no, that doesn't feel good. This edge, that, and then coming back and slowly finding like that center kind of place and really working out what feels good in alignment for you. For me, the big thing is it does come down to energy. What I find now is oftentimes things that aren't in integrity for me, I don't feel like I've got energy to do them anymore. Whereas if something's in integrity for me, I feel quite lit up at the idea of doing it and create. Like if someone said, you've got to make a reel tomorrow, I would probably sit down and be like, I have zero energy to do this. Because it doesn't feel aligned for me, so that has started to, I guess, become a bit of a barometer for me. But I don't know. I think in the beginning you've got to experiment. Did you experiment when you were like
Oh my gosh,
starting out?
still everything is through the lens of that, my values, the values of my business, and the energy of the work. Like I often talk about our work, our purpose or soul work or whatever we call it is its own separate entity. I don't know if you remember this from when we first started, when we were working together, but it's its own separate entity that we need to be in co-creation with, as opposed to letting it like sit in our field and take from us. And so it's kind of like connecting with that on an energetic level and being really mindful of that. But absolutely, like what feels really good, and my clients get so annoyed with me because they were like, should I do this? And I'm like, I don't know, how does it feel? And oftentimes we don't know till we've made the decision. Like action is such an important part of it, aligned action, because sometimes you don't learn this stuff until you do it. And then you go, never doing that again. Or I hated that part of my launch, or that offer that I created, or the way I'm showing up over here. It feels, and you just sometimes don't know till you've done it. So
100%. I've had that with offers, even when I've done long-term containers, and then got to them, okay, next time that I can only do 3 months, I can't do that for 6 months, so yeah, exactly the same. Lots of trial and error, I think, for everyone, isn't it?
For sure. And that actually just leads me to a little other question that I want to ask before we finish up. Like, has that informed the offers that you create? Because I've noticed one thing that you've been doing a lot this year have been more like masterclasses, one-off things versus the big year-long containers. And I know you still offer that stuff, but has that been informed by exactly what we're talking about?
Yeah, it has. I don't think I got to the end of last year and I kind of had the realization that, I don't think I'm going to do sort of 6 to 12 month offers or programs again, except for one-on-one. Working with people one-on-one for that amount of time still feels good. But when it comes to group experiences, because it's a lot of energy to hold, and I'm so receptive and fluid, and like I'm designed, I'm sun in extremes, I'm a quad right, that things just come in and I want to create them quickly too. So like an idea drops in and I want to be able to share that in 2 weeks time or 3 weeks time. I don't want to be fully booked that I can't do anything else for 6 months. So that style really works for me, but I've only really found that this year. Up until last year, I was still doing like 6-month containers.
I love seeing the way that we all could do better, I think, and you're such a great embodiment of it, that like the work that you teach, the work that you're actually doing with your clients, you're living every day, you're actually checking in and tapping in, and astrology and human design is such an amazing way to be doing that as like a guide, or not a guideline, but like a lighthouse almost to alignment and being so much more in connection with yourself than our minds can get in the way, and the conditioning can get in the way and all the other things. And I love how you bring the work that you actually teach into your daily life and your business.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, honey. I think the embodiment of our work is so important, and it's literally
everything.
It's why I can use human design and astrology, because I'm actually obsessed with them.
It's so obvious how much you love it and it means to you.
Thanks, hon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. This has been such an incredible conversation. And I know for anyone who is interested in astrology and human design, this is just going to help them take so many little nuggets of wisdom away, and hopefully maybe even spark some curiosity for people that this is brand new to. Is there a way that people can connect with you further?
Yes, I have a SMS subscription service that people can join to receive insights on astrology and human design to their phone. If anyone's interested in learning about their human design, I also have some human design energy guides that will be available. So they're sort of bespoke written reports, basically, that go through all the elements of a person's human design. So a good place to start if you're wanting to just start diving in. But thank you for having me, hon. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. For anyone who wants to check out Amy on Instagram, or check out any of the resources that she just mentioned, all of those links will be in the show notes, where you can go and have a look around, dive into the world of human design and astrology. It's so addictive. Thank you again. So many amazing nuggets. And it's just been so wonderful to connect with you again after a little while.
Thanks, honey. Good to see you.
I hope you enjoyed this interview of the Do Business Differently interview series. I know I definitely love chatting with Amy. I hope that you enjoyed it too. If you did, please leave a like and make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the upcoming interview series or any of the other content that's happening here on the channel. To catch up on other episodes of the Do Business Differently interview series, check out this playlist here, and I'll see you in the next one.